Hey class. Well, here we are in Unit 6. We're a couple days into this. It is in the early wee hours of the morning here for Independence Day, and wanted to get that Unit 6 video overview posted. We're going to be screencasting on this one, so we can go ahead and kind of step through what we are looking at. So this is the Civil War is often referred to as that seminal event in American history. This week, we're going to be looking through World War II and up through the mid-years of the Cold War. And this is that next event in American history, or that next time frame in American history, where you see that defined role of what the future of America is going to look like really start to take hold here. So, in World War I, we had an intervention into what was going on in the world at that point. And following World War I, we started to recede back into isolationist policies. Shortly thereafter, when World War II started up, we see the United States assert itself once again on the international stage. What's going to change is the role that the United States will take on after. Here we establish ourselves as that global superpower, and in doing so, we act as the counterbalance to the Soviet Union and the spread of communism. To do this, the American foreign policy takes a drastic change here. No longer isolationist, we start to take on a much different role in every theater in the world combating the spread of communism. We see this in the Korean War, the next decade in Vietnam, and just a general shift in the way that the United States views itself. So, to study all that this week, we are looking at Unit 6, World War II and the Cold War. We're going to go through, read our chapter on World War II. We're going to take the World War II quiz. Following that, we're going to talk about the Cold War, specifically 1945 up until about 1960. We're going to have the Unit 6 reflection exercise. So our Unit 6 reflection exercise is going to cover two questions that you'll have the option to take a look over. We have option 1, Civics 101 on nuclear weapons, and we're going to talk about the United States arsenal of nuclear weapons. And then we're going to talk about what this is called is the stuff you missed in history class, or three close nuclear calls. I look forward to reading these. So myself, I am a nuclear operations officer in the Air Force. I work with nuclear weapons on a daily basis. I have been through quite a bit of schooling on the use of nuclear weapons, and I very much look forward to what you're doing here. Just to comment on this, when we talk about nuclear weapons, right? There's two concepts that we can use here, and this is what I personally look at it through, and also what the military kind of views these things through. So, the use of nuclear weapons. There's two options here. We have the use of nuclear weapons, or the employment of nuclear weapons. The use of nuclear weapons, we would say, is the role of nuclear deterrence, let's say. On a daily basis, the United States is recognized as the premier nuclear power in the world, and that influences other countries' decision making and what they're going to talk with the United States about. We also extend an umbrella of nuclear deterrence around the world, and that says that countries like, say, South Korea, although we worry about the nuclear threat in North Korea that goes on, South Korea knows that the United States supports South Korea, and it eliminates the type of need for, or the felt need that some countries would have that says we need to get our own nuclear arsenal. They say, nah, we're good, the United States has us covered here. The employment of nuclear weapons would be the actual nuclear yield, like the dropping of the atomic bomb over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's where a nuclear weapon is employed for the specific purpose of creating nuclear yield, and that it would be mushroom cloud followed by the wave of destruction that follows after. So on a daily basis, in Alex League's opinion, nuclear weapons are used. That's just my side tangent here. All right, so anyways, I look forward to this. These will be great conversations to have back and forth, and if anybody would like to discuss these things, more than happy to. All right, so moving back here, we'll go through our reflection exercise. Now we're going to have a controversial discussion here. This is going to be about the decision to drop the atomic bombs on Japan. Was it justified? This is a question that is, in many circles, not settled. When the atomic weapons were dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, this was a major shift in the history of the United States as well as the history of the world. There are a lot of conversations about, was it justified? What would happen? I encourage you all, take your time reading through this, give it some great thought, and a couple overarching questions I'd like you to just kind of have floating around on this one. Think about the role of the Soviet Union in this. The non-aggression pact that they had with Japan had them mediating at the time, you could say, what the outcome of the conflict would be. When that non-aggression pact is dissolved, there was a different shift that went on in this. I also want you to think, what would Japan be like if it had a similar outcome to Europe, where we saw Eastern Europe and Western Europe? We see the support of communism versus the support of democracy, of the Western mentality on these things. And look at Japan today and consider, what would it be? Sometimes this is viewed as a stretch, but what would it be like if the country was split between those two ideologies? I also want you to take into consideration when you're reading this and you are constructing your discussion here, how many American lives would have been lost attempting to invade the continent? How many Japanese lives would have been lost defending the continent on a ground out, long conflict sweeping across the entirety of the Japan archipelago? So these are just some things to consider with this. But moving back to what we're working on this week, I look forward to reading these discussions. Again, this is a unit, as you can probably tell, I enjoy the discussions that go into it, and this is something that I professionally enjoy studying myself. So we'll continue moving on here. Lastly, we're going to talk about that final project, our topic, our working thesis, and the format that's going to be involved. This week, we are looking for each of you to, we need that final project topic, our thesis, and a paragraph of what you're doing to move into this. I loved the ideas I saw. I love the enthusiasm, the personal approaches, everything. A couple of notes on the final project. Just remember, we want to focus on something that is in the past rather than strictly on current events with things. So if we want to talk about any of the topics in there, I just encourage each of you to pick a decade that you would like to dedicate this to, because if we leave it open-ended, and that doesn't mean you can't comment on current events and things that are going on today. What that just means is that we want to study a limited time period, because if we leave it too open-ended, this is just going to, you're going to keep spiraling into a lot of different topics, and we want to just choose a defined set of limits of what you're going to be studying. And I promise that is what's going to make your research so rewarding on all this. And if you connect it to things that are going on today in the world, this will allow you to really study a controlled part of it, and that will that in the end is going to make you better from it, and also your research is going to come out better from it. So everybody wins in this, and I look forward. There are so many great ideas that y'all had, so we'll keep that going. Lastly, one thing I did want to comment on is that we have the course survey just opened up. Please take the time to accomplish that course survey. After you do, you're going to get an email receipt that you finished it off, and that's going to play into the extra credit assignment, which I am still putting the finishing touches on. but we're going to make that worth enough of your grade that if we struggled on the midterm exam, let's say, that we'll be able to make up for that gap inside your grade. We are doing a great job in this. As I said, the enthusiasm is there and everything is moving along here. This course goes until about July 24th, July 23rd, right in there. We'll be submitting your final grades. So let's keep up the great work. I appreciate everything you're doing, and happy Independence Day. Thanks, y'all.